Uh, okay, so welcome to Tanya. Welcome to Iggeret Ha Teshuvah. Welcome to the kind of Torah that we have been instructed to learn to help us prepare for the coming of Mashiach. And why do I say that? Because the more we coming to the times of Mashiach, the more the subtle things, and they're not so subtle when you really think about them, but things like kavana, your feelings, your thoughts, the way you attach to what you're doing, not simply just doing the thing, whether it's a mitzvah or whatever, just because you're supposed to do it. But the more we get into messianic times, the more we want to be able to fill everything that we're doing with the right consciousness, the right kavona, the right understanding, an awareness of the spiritual impact of what we're doing. And Torah Hasidus, the Torah of Hasidus, the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov, based on the Arizal and the other Kabbalists, is the inner dimension of Torah. And that's the Torah that's going to get us through these trying and challenging and difficult times. So that's what we're doing. So welcome. And I just want to verify the phone number without that's coming joining us on the phone. Is that Shoshana? Just if it is, yes or no. If it's someone else, announce who you are. Okay, doesn't matter. Little note, maybe it is. Somebody's going to tell me. Still, someone can't hear you. Other people, no. I think we've done. Susan, you can hear me now, right? Yeah. Okay. So, what we have been doing, because we talking about Teshuvah, this is Iggeret Ha Teshuvah. It's a pamphlet, not a book, not a manual, not something that's supposed to be necessary forever and ever, but a temporary addressing of what could be and what should be a temporary lapse when we sort of, I don't want to say fall off the wagon, but kind of fall off the wagon. We somehow we do something, and what happens when we do something wrong or we don't do something we're supposed to do? What happens now? There are other approaches to Torah that will talk about reward and punishment. That when you do good things, you get rewarded, and when you do bad things, you get punished. So the approach of the Tanya is completely different. The approach of the Tanya is explaining what is the effect on your soul and on the world when you don't do a positive commandment that you're supposed to do, what light is lost in the world, what effects of your action are not felt because you didn't do a positive thing. And when you do a negative thing, something that you were specifically instructed not to do, what are the impacts on your neshama and on the world from that negative impact? Now, the Tanya tells us that those impacts are significant. We've talked about them before. We've talked about the impact of not doing a mitzvah, how certain light doesn't get revealed in the higher worlds, that offers the higher world a kind of harmony that then impacts the higher world to send down a level of shefer, a different level of revelation and blessing into the world. We spoke about that. We spoke about the fact that when you do a negative commandment, something that you've been commanded not to do, requested, invited, instructed not to do, when you do that thing, you damage your soul, and you damage your soul up to its root. So you're really damaging Hashem in a way. The way I heard about it when I first heard about these kind of teachings was that you take the part of God that is in you and you schlep that part of God in you into undesirable places or into negative places or tumadik places. That's one way of looking at it. But the way that Tanya approached it is it talked about how you damage the root of your soul, and that goes all the way up to the highest level. So in a way, you're damaging Hashem when you do something that you're not supposed to do, because us and Hashem are united and connected. We part of him and he's part of us. So then all of that could be quite severe and quite bad, and we could feel bad about all of these things that we either the good things we failed to do or the bad things that we didn't stop ourselves from doing. But then the Tanya tells us that the Torah has taught us that we have this incredible gift of teshuvah. And through teshuvah, we can really negate the negative aspects of the sin. And then the Tanya also went to great lengths of explaining to us that when there's a sin, there's two parties involved. There's you, the person whose soul has been damaged or hurt in some way. And then there's Hashem, or your relationship with Hashem, your closeness or your distance from Hashem. And so what tshuva is trying to do, what the tshuva is trying to do is the tshuva is trying to accomplish a repair of that, a repair of that relationship. It's trying to repair that relationship so that you and Hashem are not distanced, but you have an opportunity or a bridge to come together. And that's what all of this is investigating. And if I muted you, it's because I heard a lot of scuffling in your area. But if you want to talk or unmute yourself and you're quiet, just feel free to unmute yourself. So we've been talking about tshuva, and we've been talking about the fact that from the point of view of the Torah, if you there's different kinds of tshuva. There's a tshuva when you don't do a positive thing, you just say you're sorry, and you kind of say, oops, I won't forget that again. That's one kind of situation when you don't do a positive command. But if you do something that you're not supposed to do, just being sorry is not enough. You have to wait till Yom Kippur, and then the day of Yom Kippur will continue and sort of finish off the restoration process, so to speak, of you and Hashem, or you and your soul, or you and the damage that you've inflicted on your soul. And then if you do one of the more serious averas, I think specifically, if I remember correctly, specifically the averas that are more intense, then not only do you have to do teshuvah, not only do you have to fast, but also it says Hashem sends suffering on you, and that suffering is going to be a cleansing process. And then what kind of suffering? It isn't the kind of suffering that you can take on yourself. It's not suffering that you do. It's suffering that comes from Shemayim, and you can't help it, and you go through it because your soul needs some kind of a polishing or some kind of a fixing, and that's what that's about. And then we started to talk about something else. We started to talk about the fact that even if you've done a tshuva, and even if you've been forgiven, there's still another level of repair to your soul that comes about through doing something that's called a nachas ruach for Hashem. Like a nachas ruach, you could almost translate as a good feeling, a good vibe, nachas ruach, a kind of feeling of closeness that comes between you and Hashem as a result. And then we spoke about of an offering that is brought in the Beis HaMikdash. And then because we don't have a Beis HaMikdash anymore, the fasting, the act of fasting replaces those offerings in the temple. And we were sort of in the middle of this talking about fasting and how fasting can stand in the stead of bringing a korban. And there was this very special quote that I read, and it was from the Talmud, Rav Sheshes, and he would sit fasting, and after he davened, he would say the following. This is to give you an idea of why fasting can replace an offering in the temple. He would say, Master of the universe, you know that when the holy temple stood, a person who had sinned would bring an offering of an entire animal. The Kohanim would only offer up its fat and its blood, yet that was enough for atonement to be granted to the person. Now I have been sitting and fasting, and so my fat and blood have diminished. May it be pleasing before you that my diminished fat and blood from fasting should be considered as a sacrifice for you on the altar, and may I find favor in your eyes. So he's making a parallel that when you take your animal, you take a representative of your animal soul, your animal self. If you were a lazy animal, then you might take a lazy animal. If you were lazy, if you just followed blindly other people, there's a sheep follow blindly, or you were stubborn like an ox or whatever. You take the animal aspect of yourself, and then there's an animal that represents that, and that gets offered. So for this situation, this Rabbi Rav Sheshes is saying, just like the blood and the flesh of the animal is burnt up on the altar, so as I'm fasting, my own blood and my own flesh is sort of being burnt off of me through my hunger and my discomfort. That should remind you, that should be like the actual animal that I cannot offer anymore because there's no temple. So that was where that idea came from. And then we started talking about the fact that we don't have a temple, and fasting starts to replace the offerings in the temple. And then we spoke about the fact that the rabbis of yesteryear would fast even for minor infractions. And I think it was just Susan and I last week, and we were talking about the minor infractions. And the way that I explained the minor infractions are based on people, even if we think about it today in our life, people have different levels of sensitivity. So if that is Shoshana on the line, because I haven't got a confirmation if that is Shoshana or not, but maybe it is. Yeah, so I don't know if it is her or not, but different people are more sensitive or less sensitive to smells, to perfumes. Somebody could walk into a room and say, uh-oh, the linen in this room was washed with detergent that isn't perfume free. Or you could walk into a room and say, someone was in this room yesterday wearing a perfume that's still, giving me a headache or whatever. And another person wouldn't even remember that. So the Tanya is going to talk about rabbis who are on a very, very elevated level, that if a group of rabbis said that for a cow to go out on Shabbat with a strap between its horns, that would be considered carrying on Shabbat. And another rabbi considered it not to be carrying on Shabbat. And the rabbi who didn't think it was carrying on Shabbat, when his neighbor went out with the strap on its horns, he didn't object, because according to him, he didn't think it was muksa. But then afterwards he said, wow, I didn't support my colleagues. And that wasn't respectful of me to all my rabbinical colleagues. So he fasted. It says he fasted so many fasts till his teeth went black. So that level of him thinking, hang on, for a person of my sensitivity, that's just not okay. That is damaging my soul. And I use the example of Michelangelo, or a great artist has a crack in the stone. It might be a hair of a crack, but he would notice it. No one else would notice it. And then we had other examples like that, where the tefillin strap fell on the wrong side, not the black shiny side, but the other side, and the rabbi didn't turn it over, so he felt that for that he should fast, and other such things. And then we came to the idea of anger. So we know losing one's temper is a very bad avera. It's compared to idol worship, avodah zarah, and the word for anger is ka'as. And so the Arizal, Rabbi Israel
Gloria.
Luria,
Mhm. Right?
Yitzchak Luria,
Mhm.
he advised 151 fasts
Wow.
because the numerical value of the word for anger in Hebrew is 151. So we were starting to talk about these different fasts and these calculations of the fasts, and about wine. That if somebody consumed wine that was rabbinically prohibited. So maybe a non-from person touched it, or a non-Jewish person opened it, and the person didn't realize, and they drank that wine. Then the Arizal suggested 61 fasts, because the word for sorry, 73 fasts, because the gematria of Yayin is 73.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's where we got up to, and that's where we are going to continue from. So just also to just say that other times when it's important to fast, or when we have a time when we do fast, not only to repair for sins, but there can be public or personal fasts which are not connected to tshuva and are carried out to avert a negative decree. So can anyone think of when that might have happened?
Or
Mhm. So obviously there was a bad decree on all the Jews in the story of Purim,
mhm.
and Queen Esther wants everyone to fast before she goes to Hashverosh. And then we learned, or some of us learned, that right before the actual battle, the only person who fasted, Tiny Esther, says, I think Yossi Jacobson, was Queen Esther herself, because everybody else couldn't fast because they had to be ready for battle. So Queen Esther, who wasn't actually fighting in the actual battle, she fasted. So all the Yidden fasted a year before Purim, when she was going to go to Hashverosh. Then they all fasted for 3 days so that she should be well received by King Ahasuerus. But then on the 14th of Purim, when the bad guys were given permission to fight against the Yidden, they were all soldiers. Men, women, and children were all threatened. So they were all in the category of soldiers. So they couldn't fast, because then they wouldn't be
Have
able to
energy.
fight well. So who fasted? Actually, Tiny Esther. Who
Mhm.
fasted that fast the day before Purim?
Was it her maidservants?
Her. I think
Oh, makes sense.
herself,
Her, yeah.
she herself fasted, and possibly her maidservants as well, but she herself fasted. Okay, so to avert negative decrees is one kind of fast. Personal fast carried out to assist the full expression of teshuvah. So we said that if you do a negative, you do something you're not supposed to do, teshuvah is not enough. You have to come wait for Yom Kippur. And then there's also a personal fast that's carried out, and this is sort of what we were talking about as a gift last week, as a gift, like a korban is a gift, as a gift to find favor in Hashem's eyes. Now, this is, we said you've already done tshuva, you've already fixed the damage to your soul, but still you kind of want to sweeten the relationship. You want to make it a little, you're officially forgiven. You've officially restored yourself back to zero on the below zero, above zero calculation, but you still feel like you want to do something extra. So then we spoke about bringing a korban, and because we can't bring a korban anymore, there's this idea of doing a fast for the sake of awakening Hashem's favor. And that's where we got up to. And then there's another fourth level of fasting. So we're going to try and find where we're up to in this text, because it's a little different than the other text. So let's see where we are. And then yeah, we up to here, and then we up to here, and then we up to here. Right. Yeah, I think we are up to here. Yeah, we are up to here. Okay, and then there's another, and then there's another level. So I'm going to start from here, V'derech klal, and just before we read it inside, I'm going to just speak about it a little more. So all of the first three things that we've been speaking about till now: fasting to avert an evil decree, fasting to be part of your tshuva because you did a negative thing you weren't supposed to do and you need tshuva, as well as a fast we talked about. Another level of fasting when you've done your tshuva, but you want to kind of bring a gift, so to speak, to your king, or a student had a fallout with his Rebbe and then he apologizes and his Rebbe forgives him, but he still feels the relationship's not fully restored. He can bring him a present or do something extra special for him. So that's the first three levels of fasting that we've talked about already. Now we're going to go to another level of fasting. So the first three were discussed in the Talmud, but the next one is that it's a more esoteric, mystical reason for fasting. And it says that it's a segula to bring about a revelation of the blessed supernal divine favor, the Ratzon HaElyon. So the Ratzon HaElyon. So v'derech klal, as a general rule, sod hata'anit, the mystery of fasting, he segula nifla'ah, a wondrous segula, lehitgalot, to reveal Ratzon HaElyon Baruch Hu, the revelation of this of the supernal divine favor, the supernal divine favor. And the Tanya is going to talk about this level of supernal divine favor, which is kind of, we spoke about the damage to your soul, and then we even said that sometimes the damage to your soul reaches right up into the root of your soul, which is right up in the heavenly realms. And so this damage is repaired. So one level of that damage is repaired by divine favor, which is what we said the korban and the fast is. But now there's even a higher level. This is the Ratzon HaElyon. it's a supernal divine favor that's even higher. And the supernal divine favor is even higher than that. It is a divine energy which transcends both the damage caused by sin and the favor needed to repair it. Supernal divine favor is a light so powerful it could never be damaged in the first place. So let's just, and apparently the secret of fasting is that it has the power to draw down the supernal light into our lives. So all of these tzaddikim, really, these very righteous people, were drawing down this high light into the world. So it's higher even than fixing their own damage to their own soul or fixing their relationship with Hashem. It's kind of even on a higher level. So כמו הקורבן שנאמר בו ריח ניחוח להשם. So about an offering, we spoke about an aroma that's pleasing to Hashem. And then the Tanya is quoting Isaiah, and he says, do you call this a fast and a day desirable to Hashem? And okay, so this isn't clear. The words here don't explain it enough. I'm going to, so let me read it in here. So when it says that, what is this reach nichoach laHashem, an aroma pleasing to Hashem? So Rashi interprets this verse to mean that Hashem says, it gives me satisfaction that I spoke and my ratzon was fulfilled. So we're putting words in Hashem's mouth, so to speak. But we're seeing from this that a sacrifice brings down a level of ratzon, divine favor, divine will into the world. And the quote that's supporting this is a quote from Isaiah. And this is always an interesting quote because Hashem, it's quoted from, there's a Haftorah where this Isaiah, this whole Haftorah is, and Isaiah is saying, do you think Hashem just wants fasts, just wants empty fasts? What he really wants is he wants your heart, and he wants your kindness to your neighbors, and he wants you remembering the widows and remembering the orphans. And he gives some rebuke to the Yidden to think that just fasting can accomplish goals. But the quote is used here to imply that a day of fasting is a day of ratzon, of favor, that the fasting is affecting a favorable response from Hashem on high. And so what the Tanya is trying to tell us is that the secret of fasting is that it brings supernal divine favor into the world. And Isaiah is the one who tells us that the day of fasting, here the Tanya says, Miklal she hatsom nikra hanirtze hu yom ratzon. That on a day of fasting, there's a day, I would say, of appealing to Hashem's favor, and to that it becomes a day of favor because people are trying to elicit Hashem's favor. And so it says that Tanya brings this verse by Isaiah, whose visions of the divine chariot were unsurpassed, from which we can conclude that he was uniquely empowered among the prophets to perceive the sublime energy of supernal divine favor. In other words, Isaiah saw the divine favor being elicited by the fasting of the Yidden. So on a day of fasting, he could perceive that energy of divine favor being elicited by the fasting. All right, is everybody with me on why we fast, the effect of the fast, etc.? So the next chapter is a little technical, or not technical, but it's kind of gets very specific. I'm going to read it a little. I'll just read it fairly fast, I think.
This is
Chapter 3, right? So what's going to happen here is that, remember, we told you about the calculations of how many fasts you're supposed to do for a particular sin. There's a lot of fasts. We said 61 for this, 73 for that, 150 for this, or whatever. I don't know if those were the numbers, but significant amount of fasts. And what happens if you do the same sin over and over again? You know, how many sins, how many fasts would you have to do? And if you did a particular sin more than 3 times, you know, if your tshuva is fixing the root in your soul of doing something wrong, then if it fixes to the root, do you have to fast over and over again? Or did your fasting and your tshuva one time fix all of the times that you did that sin? Do you understand the question? Or do you have to refast and redo tshuva every time you do that sin? So we're trying to calculate, it's a bit technical, how many times we have to fast and how this is all going to work. So the later Musa sages who lived after the Arizal were divided in their opinion about one who repeated a sin many times. Some said that he should fast the number of fasts appropriate to that sin according to the number of transgressions. So let's say this is a sin that's used as an example, the wasteful emission of semen, is 84 fasts, which is quite a lot of fasts. But if you've done that sin more than once, do you do 84 and then another 84 and then another 84? So if someone commits this sin 10 or 20 times, say, he must fast 10 or 20 times, 84 fasts, and so on. So this would be comparable to bringing a chatas offering required for every time the sin is done. But others say that this would be compared to an olah offering, not a chatas offering, which would be when you don't do a positive command. And the violation of a number of positive commands is atoned for by one olah. So let's say you didn't say Shema 10 times. You didn't say Shema, and that's a positive command. So according to the way you would bring an olah, if you brought one olah offering, that would atone for all the time you didn't say Shema.
But what if you just said Shema the next time you're supposed to say Shema? Then
Well, we spoke about that even if you said Shema all the times, when you didn't say it on May 23rd of 19, of 2024, you didn't say it that time, you can't get that back. It's gone. And even if you say it all the other days, that particular gap of you saying it is going to be something missing in the world. So that's why you're going to bring an olah. But the question is, if you didn't say Shema on a few different days, one olah, according to Zavachim, is enough. So they're trying to decide, let's say, not saying Shema, you're supposed to say X amount of, you're supposed to do X amount of fast. Does it compound every time you don't say Shema, or is it enough that you didn't say Shema a bunch of times and you just take on a certain amount of fast for the whole bunch. So the accepted decision in this dispute is to undertake 3 times the number of fasts that you should fast for that sin. So why 3 times? Because if as a consequence of, okay, so the idea here is that when you do certain kinds of sins, on the one hand, if you think about that rope that bonds us to Hashem, and we said it's a rope with many, many strands. If there's one mitzvah that you didn't do, you've broken one strand. Even if you didn't do that mitzvah many times, it's really one strand that's damaged, and so you need to fix it. But then other opinions say, hang on, it's not just one strand and one body part. When you've done a sin so many times, it's kind of like started to infiltrate into your whole body. The negativity of that one missing, or that one thing that you did wrong, or that one thing you didn't do right. If it's many, many times, it starts to impact even other aspects of you. So they came down to 3 times. If you do 3 times, whatever the amount of fast you're supposed to do, if you do 3 times, then that's going to be okay. So so then it says here, the 3rd time he does that sin, the stain of that sin is penetrating him from one side of his being all the way to another. It's not isolated anymore. It's kind of like seeped into his whole being. If he did the sin 3 times, then at least he has to do the series of fasts that are required 3 times. So if he commits the sin many times, if he's done it 3 times, that means it's kind of affected him more than just a one-time thing. And then his teshuvah has to be that he does all the fasts 3 times. Okay. But then the Alter Rebbe says, but that's only if he's strong, strong and robust, and his physical health wouldn't be harmed, because that's still a lot of fasts. If he has to do 84 fasts and he does it 3 times, that's still a lot of fasts. So that's only if he's strong and robust. But anyone who would be affected by many fasts and suffer illness or pain, like most of us in contemporary generations, all of us, we're all much more frail and sensitive and fragile than they were in previous generations, then it's forbidden to take on so many fasts. And in fact, if you take on so many fasts, you are going to be punished here, kares or maves. So that's like serious. So in other words, fasting until you're hurting yourself and you're doing damage to yourself is not good at all. In fact, that itself is considered not okay. So, and it says even in the early generations, only the strongest of them could actually mortify themselves and fast so frequently. So whoever cannot fast and does fast is called a sinner. So don't be like those people thinking that you're on such a high level that you can take on all these fasts. If that actually will weaken you and make you ill and all of that, that's really very bad. And so, and then if you fasting and then you can't learn Torah, well, that's also a bad thing, because you don't want your fasting to prevent you from doing one of the most important mitzvahs, which is learning Torah, because that's for sure like not a desirable thing. So what's the remedy? And the remedy is that you can the kadichtiv v'chata'ach b'tzadakah paruk. You redeem your sin with charity. So that's really, and I said it already last week. I gave a sneak preview that the way we can get around this is we use charity. Indeed, the codifiers of Torah law specified that one should donate the equivalent of 18 large Polish coins called Gedolim Polish for each day of Teshuvah, for each day of a fast that you were supposed to be fasting. So now I'll tell you what that turns out to be in contemporary currency. So it turns out, I think, about $7. So just let's see. 18 pishitim, equivalent to the biblical measurement of one seller. 12 pishitim or 18 Polish gulden are equivalent to 2/3 of a seller. Contemporary value of a seller can be calculated, blah, 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 2/3. So basically, I think it comes out to, when it says 18 large Polish coins here, right? Where's the 18? 18 large Polish coins for each day that you should be doing your fasting. That's approximately $7. And the wealthy should add to this amount for the redemption of each fast according to his means, as it's stated in Magen Avraham. And this has been stated because in contemporary generations, excessive fasting causes illness and pain. And so we should use tzedakah, and a person should, but if a person did one of the really serious sins, that the kind of sin that would be punishable by death, then that person should do a proper series of fasting. So let's see what he means, what he means when he says that. So which serious sins? So let's.
You said one of them is laying your seed, right? Spilling your seed. So that's definitely
Yeah.
Right. Committing adultery. I mean,
Right. I want to see the list. If it carries the death penalty, Beit Din Shemayim, in those sins which carry the death penalty through the agent of heaven. Well, you're right. It says in our example, emitting of seed in vain. So I mean, probably many, I've understood that men do this without meaning to. It's hormonal when they're young. It sort of happens. They can't always control it. But the Tanya is saying that at least one time one should carry out the 84 fasts once in their lifetime. So, and then our Rizal is trying to say he can postpone those fasts until the short winter days and fast some 10 days or less in one winter and then another bunch in another time, and he can kind of stretch it out. So he could even eat a little until about 3 hours before sunrise. This would still be considered a fast. And then he would complete the 3 times 84 fasts. But I don't even know if people do this at all. And it says here, he may fast another 4 times 84 only until
that's a
noon.
lot.
Only until past noon. So it looks like it would be from before sunrise.
Till
sunrise
noon.
until noon. That's what it's saying here, until noon. So, and then it says 2 half days are considered 1 full day. And so maybe there are people who live I don't know if they just have it in their mind that they just regularly fast on certain days from sunrise, eat before sunrise until noon, and just put that as part of their Seder, and they're making up these fasts. I don't know. I'm not this is sort of, I don't want to say above my pay grade, but I don't, we don't live in this level of piety.
And yet, intermittent fasting is so popular.
Right.
Yeah, it is very interesting. So these would be the kind of sins that would be would incur death by divine agency. So, and then there are those comparable to idolatry, murder, and so on. And one should be stringent to undertake the required number of fasts at least once in his lifetime. And um, and each heart knows its own anguish and desires its vindication. So just to stress that all of this is not punishment, right? This is a person trying to polish a perceived crack or damage in their own soul. And they want so much to have a wholesome relationship with Hashem, and they want so much to not have damage or cracks or breaks on their soul, that they're doing this to bring shlemus to their relationship. It's not that, it's kind of wanting to bring things back into that alignment. And then they fast, and then he may redeem them all by charity to the value of 18 Polish Godolim Polish for each day. So too charity may redeem all other fasts that he should have undergone, even for sins not entailing death, and even for neglecting a positive command, whether it was explicit in the Torah or rabbinically ordained, and for neglect of a positive command of Torah study according to the number of fasts prescribed by the penances of the Arizal. All of these fasts he may redeem, as explained above, if he cannot mortify himself or make himself struggle or suffer, as explained above. And even though this might come to a considerable amount of money, he shouldn't fear the injunction that one should not extravagantly distribute more than 1/5 of one's property for charity, because this kind of thing, when you're redeeming on a pagam, a damage to your soul, can't be considered extravagant distribution, because you're doing it to redeem your own self, really. And this is also no less necessary than healing his body or his other needs. And then this is a good time to be generous with charity. That's why those who have Yirat Shamayim are very generous with charity, because you don't know what sins you're repairing with your charity. And because most of us lack the stamina to afflict ourselves, really. And that brings us kind of to the end of chapter 3. So the whole of this Sefer does not continue to talk about fasting. The first 3 chapters are about fasting and the pros and the cons and the details, but then it goes on to other things. Regarding it's been a little, I'm happy to be moving on to the fasting, from the fasting story, but to just keep reiterating that the goal here is understanding that the way that we are supposed to be in relation to our souls and in relation to Hashem is we're supposed to be in a place where there's no distance, no perceived reason to not feel fully aligned and fully connected. And any of these things that we're talking about are all for the purpose of bringing us back into that alignment and that connection and that feeling that our souls are whole and undamaged, and any kind of damage that we have this opportunity and availability to repair. And that's the beautiful thing about it, that no matter even very serious things, there's a pathway to repair. Repair your own soul, repair the connection with Hashem, and get back into alignment with one's higher self, with Hashem, with one's soul. And that's the part to really focus on, because if you think about it, people can get very down on the mistakes they've made in the past. And knowing about tshuva is this opportunity that we have to know that no matter what we've done, even serious things, there's a way back and a way to be forgiven and a way to restore our relationship with Hashem. And I guess that's what all this is about. And those examples of those rabbis who were so stringent is just maybe to inspire us to be aware of things that we do, even in relationships with other people, where we feel the relationship may be damaged or we create a distance, to know that Torah believes in the capacity of repair and teshuvah and making things good again, to the point almost that it can be better than it was before because of the modality or the miracle or the offering or the I'm trying to find the word, the process of teshuvah, that it can really fix and heal distances and damage in connections. So that's Tanya for today.
Thank you.
Tanya for today. So next week, Monday, I will be flying back from LA. So I don't think we'll be able to have Tanya because I'm going for the weekend to LA for my grandson's option.
Oh, wow.
So I will be
Mazel
probably
tov.
arriving at the airport or driving home from the airport or just landing or something like that. So I don't think.
Enjoy the nachas.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
But
Mazel
I
tov.
will be teaching on Wednesday and I will teach next week on Wednesday. Mitzvah Hashem,
Okay.
just missing Monday.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for
Thank
listening.
you
Thank
so
you
much.
for coming.
Thank you. This
Any
was wow.
comments or questions or anything else anyone wants to add?
It's
So
just
you were very quiet.
I was trying to absorb because it was, it's like I'm just trying to understand like severe, I guess you can say severe avero, i.e., a homosexual relationship or somebody committing murder. Okay, like what do they have to do? I mean, that's a lot. I mean, right? Wouldn't it be? I mean, so are they? Is there also a tshuva for at least, let's say, murder, or is that pretty much?
No, I think we did talk about it, and we did talk about those three mitzvahs. Let's say, I mean, not mitzvahs,
Are the
averas.
sins that you're
um,
supposed to?
the three averas of let's say murder, murder, idolatry, and
Right,
um,
and adultery, right?
Gilo Arias.
Hmm.
So I did teach it,
I think
and
I remember listening to it. Was like
we
last
did
week or the week
discuss it.
before? I did.
So sins which carry the punishment of kares or the death penalty inflict more spiritual damage than any other transgressions. In such a case, even the power of Yom Kippur might
Hmm.
not be sufficient to complete atonement, and then the process requires the sinner to experience suffering.
Hmm.
You do your tshuva, you fast on Yom Kippur, but your sin was so serious that
Hmm.
from Hashem, you will be put through certain struggles and suffering that
Hmm.
will be designed to bring you to a purification. But it is
Right.
amazing that even those kind of sins a person can do tshuva with.
That is amazing. I mean, that is
Yeah, I'm glad I've.
right. But they could also be going, through whatever Gehenna before they even have, because of that, because they might not
Well,
have finished it
this
here
this this is suffering in this world, that
in
in
this world. Okay.
the
Hmm.
time part of your process, you do tshuva, you wait for
Hmm.
Kippur, and then there's stuff you're going to go through.
Hmm.
And I guess we don't always see it or know it, and I don't know if
That's
it
true.
happens, right away. I
Right.
don't know, but it
Okay.
does seem like there's tshuva,
That's wild.
yeah,
That's wild.
yeah.
Okay. That's wild.
Okay, Jill, any comments from you? You were very quiet. No comments from Jill.
Jill? Oh, there she
No,
is.
You
I'm
there?
holding back on any comments.
You're holding back?
I'm skipping this chapter.
Oh,
I basically can relate to fasting and the assistance of fasting, but this whole aspect of the Alter Rebbe's bringing up is not something I want to touch.
okay.
Mhm.
Well, let's see what happens. Hopefully, we're going to move into other aspects
Okay.
of the Teshuvah exploration.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right. Have
Have
a
a
good
good
week.
week.
I don't think I'll
Happy
see
New
you Wednesday because I'll just listen. I have the Chabad Suffering is doing this Pesach cooking demo.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so I wanted to go. I didn't realize it was Wednesday, but I really want to go since we're
Oh,
having like,
enjoy.
thank
Enjoy.
you. Since we're having a lot of people, I figured let me see if I can get some
Yes.
new recipes.
Okay. Have a
Okay.
lovely
Thank you.
evening. All
Have a
right.
great trip. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.